I had an interesting email from an actor this week because this actor had been reviewing the recordings of the scenes that she had done in a previous masterclass and had decided that her first line run, her first reading of the scene was much more engaging. It was better than the final version on the night. And I had a look at those recordings and I agreed. So what had gone wrong? Well, the actor thought that the problem was simply that she hadn't reset herself properly for the beginning of the scene to redo the final take. And that's what I want to focus on in this 15th Talking Acting for 2022. I want to explore that issue of how to reset yourself to do another take. Because this was plainly what the problem was here. And the good news was, firstly, that this actor could diagnose what the problem was, and she was right. And the next bit of good news was that when we looked at the performance that had been delivered in the final take, the less satisfactory one, in fact, all the basic performance ingredients were excellent. The listening was good, all the surprises were there, and the decision-making that emerged from the surprises were there. She was complex, believable. So it wasn't a performance problem. It was a story problem. So what had happened? Well, you see, when you are doing your first run of a scene, you probably haven't run it with other actors before. You're working with your intellectual understanding, and there's a high percentage chance that you set yourself in the appropriate place at the beginning of the scene for the character. But see, what happens is that as you rehearse, your experience changes. You have an experiential experience of the circumstances and the relationship that the character is in. And so instead of it just being intellectual, you actually know how it feels, and you know the intensity with which you've had to push to achieve things. And so your understanding is now in your body as well as your mind, and it's not just an intellectual one. And so the problem is that now that you've embraced that knowledge and understanding, that when you go back to the beginning of the scene, you need to reset. You need to erase all that information that you've acquired through the experience of playing the scene. And you need to get back to a neutral position. Because on your first run, when you had a clean slate, every time you're confronted with a new difficulty for your character, then the decision-making issues are clear and complex. And so those moments step up with a simple clarity, and each time you are confronted with new information, then the difficulty continues to increase, and those steps are clear, and they are what's driving the drama. But when you go back to do another take, if you don't erase all that knowledge that is now inherently in your system, then the same interruptions to your expectations, the same difficulties will confront you, but now because you know more stuff about them, then the increase of the magnitude of the difficulty that you're facing is not as great. And so when you compare these simple graphs of the path that you follow, depending on where you start, you can see that the line is a lot flatter. So the story is not so interesting, your audience is not so engaged because the intensity of the storytelling has been diminished by the knowledge that you inherently are embodying. So it's really important to keep your dynamic storytelling going, that you put yourself back in the same position that the character is in at the start of the scene, which is not knowing that information, so that the scene becomes about them discovering it. Now, the best way of doing that, the best way, is to not get yourself back to the intensity of the first line, but it is to make sure that you reset yourself in the position that the character was in the 5 or 10 seconds before the scene started. So you get back into a really neutral position of, I'm doing this, or I've just heard that, and then the scene commences, and you can then work forward from that position. And that's what this actor agreed they hadn't done. So in last night's masterclass, we made the focus of the night making sure that every actor reset themselves to what they were doing 5 or 10 seconds before the scene started. So that the first thing that happens in the scene is a new interruption from that neutral beginning. And everyone in the class agreed that the outcomes that they achieved were better, that they were clearer about their starting position, and the journey through the scene was more under their control and more fun. So, it's a basic problem, but it's a simple problem, and it's an easy one to fix. You just have to make sure you have the habit of getting yourself back to that position of the 5 or 10 seconds before the character starts to begin your journey through the scene. I'll be talking acting. 5:45 next Tuesday. Cheers. There is much to be learnt from this unique approach. If you have a question, you can email me, richard@rehearsalroom.com. Make a booking for a free 30-minute chat, or download the ebook. It's free too.